Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about a short story collection that I read because it is Short Story Tuesday, and a specific short story about a briefcase and a case of stolen identity. I am referring to The Briefcase by Rebecca Makkai. It is from her short story collection, Music for Wartime. Simple cover, orange and black, and kind of beige, I think. Let's not have an argument about colors here. I got this from my local library. Don't forget to patronize your local libraries. They have interesting books to read that are just waiting for you to check them out. I have never encountered Rebecca Makkai before. So for those that don't know, and that would include me, Rebecca Makkai is a fairly new author, getting published within the past 10 years or so. She's written novels like The Borrower, which is about a librarian and a patron who travel across country, and I think the patron kidnaps the librarian. Not quite sure. That sounds like an interesting premise and a book that I might want to check out. And also The 100-Year House, which is a generational story about Ghost or something like that, based on what I've heard. Also something that would be interesting to check out. And she's also written a number of short stories that have appeared in this book, as well as in literary journals and magazines across the country, including McSweeney's, and she's won a lot of praise and awards too. So, she's got that going for her. I had never heard of Rebecca Makkai before, but now I'm interested in checking out more of her work, which is always nice. So, without further ado, let's talk about The Briefcase, the specific short story from this collection. I will do a summary, a little analysis, and we will move on from there. The Briefcase starts with a prisoner recalling both their life and also the fact that the history of humans seems to be humans chaining other humans, whether it be, in slavery or in this case, in political oppression. So the prisoner recalls their life and notes that they were a chef who worked in a restaurant where they were pretty well acclaimed. However, the oppressive government regime of the time did not like that restaurant because that is where revolutionaries were meeting, and so the restaurant was set on fire, and the chef was, sort of sought after by the police for giving aid or something to the revolution. They are on the run. They go through a college, and they see a soldier arresting a professor, and that professor drops their briefcase and some items of clothing. And so the chef picks up the clothing and the briefcase and adopts the identity of the professor and moves out east in order to start a new life as that professor. While in the East, the chef, who is posing as the professor, corresponds with the professor's friends and family, asking for money and aid because they had to leave real quickly due to the oppressive government, and they are given some money and aid through using a postal office box of some sort. And so, things are initially okay, although the chef is living in constant fear that somebody will find out that he is not who he says he is, and that the professor might come back if he has not been executed already, and will reclaim his life, which will throw the chef into chaos. Also, interestingly, in the briefcase, there is an assignment to the students of the professor that is like, prove using theory and logic that the sun revolves around the earth, which the chef finds a bit ridiculous because he knows that the earth actually revolves around the sun. Society becomes more bleak at this point. The amount of friends who are willing to send money and messages to the professor's family, letting them know that the professor is okay, but in hiding, becomes fewer and fewer. Soldiers start taking over and oppressing the people, or arresting dissidents or something like that, and shops begin to close. So things aren't looking too good at this point. And then the fake professor, the chef, shows up to the post office one day, and the postmaster shows him the professor's wife. And the chef tries to claim that, oh, I'm your husband. I can help you take care of the kids, and everything will be a-okay if you just believe that I'm the professor. And the wife says, absolutely not. You are not my husband. And she calls the police. And the story ends with the chef noting that he can probably fool the police or the judges or whatever jury there is into believing that he is the professor, as there is nobody to really argue against it, and there's no proof otherwise. Unfortunately, it does not seem to be a very happy ending there. In terms of analysis, there is a lot to talk about with this story. One of the ideas of the story is proving an idea that doesn't have any basis in reality. In this case, the idea is that the sun revolves around the earth. The chef finds it very ridiculous when he reads that, because he doesn't have much experience with physics or anything like that. But certainly it's the case that the earth revolves around the sun. And throughout the story, the chef kind of obsesses with the idea a little bit, and presents a bunch of arguments that might allow for him to argue that the sun revolves around the earth. And so one of them is in this passage, which I will read to you. A year had passed, but so had many years passed for many men. And after all, what was a year, if the earth did not circle the sun? The earth does not circle the sun, he wrote, ergo, the years do not pass. The earth, being stationary, does not erase the past, nor escape toward the future. Rather, the years pile on like blankets, existing at once. The year is 1848. The year is 1879. The year is 1956. Kind of a weird argument to make that doesn't necessarily hold up. Kind of more philosophical than anything else. When you can actually prove that the Earth revolves around the sun using physics and whatnot. But why is he making this argument? I think it's because Makkai is trying to draw parallels between this bizarre claim and the fact that this chef is asserting that he is the professor. Something else that has no basis in reality. No matter how often he tries to claim that he is the professor, whether it is assuming the classes that he teaches or telling people, yo, I'm the professor, that's who I am, having all of these aspects of his identity to verify, or even writing letters to friends to let him know that the professor is alive and well. That doesn't change the fact that the professor might be dead, that this chef is in no way the professor. He had a specific identity that he shook off. And so it's like saying that the sun revolves around the earth. You can claim it, you can try to make arguments for it, but at the end of the day, the chef is still not the professor. And this is definitely shown at the end of the story when the wife is kind of horrified that this man is claiming to be her husband. It's not true. She knows it's not true, and no matter how many times he tries to calm her fears, like it's not going to be any truer. It's gonna be the case is going to be that the chef is the chef and the professor is the professor, and these two are not one. So I like how she uses that weird statement, the sun revolving around the earth, to really get at this assuming a fake identity issue. Another interesting aspect of the story is the need for an identity, to have something in a world that is bleak and very disappointing. Because throughout the story, you get examples of what's going on in the world. Dissidents are being arrested. This chef's restaurant was burned down because revolutionaries ate there. The shop shops are going out of business because of the oppressive regime. Things do not look good at this point in time. And so maybe all you have is your identity, a personage that you can lay claim to, which the chef doesn't have, because he cannot say that he's the chef, as that will lead to his arrest. He can't do what the chef normally did because his restaurant burned down, and if he built another one, that one might burn down too, or he might get arrested and killed for doing dissident actions in this regime. The chef has to be someone because they don't have any identity otherwise, and this professor identity was just lying around. And so in order to be someone, they started to claim that they were the professor. That gave them some semblance of an understanding of who they were. But the chef knows that this isn't going to last forever. There's a lot of worries that he has that are underlying this entire claim, and I'd like to read to you another passage from there. One night, asleep with his head on his lover's leg, he dreams that a letter has arrived from the professor himself. They freed me at the end of the march, it says, and I crawled my way home. My hands are bloody and my knees are worn through, and I want my briefcase. In his dream, the chef takes the case and runs west, because if the professor takes it back, there will be no name left for the chef, no place on the earth. The moment his fingers leave the leather loop of the handle, he will fall off the planet. And so his biggest worry is that the professor is going to come back and reveal that he's still alive, and he's going to ask for his identity back. The briefcase is just the identity. Everything about the professor's identity was in the briefcase, and so if he takes that, the chef has nothing. He's worried that he won't have an identity anymore, and so if he doesn't have that, he might as well have disappeared off the face of the earth, which is a very strong worry, but one that in terrible times when you have nothing else to your name, that's all you can hold on to. And so even though the professor's identity isn't his, he still tries to lay claim to it. But there's still a crisis that takes place in the story, because at the very end, the wife knows that this isn't the professor, this is just the chef. And there's another interesting quote that I'd like to read to you. No, he says, no, I am right here. Of course he does not believe it, but he knows that if he had time, he could prove it. And he must, because he is the only piece of the professor left alive. The woman does not see how she is murdering her husband, right here in the post office lobby. He whispers to her, "Let me come home with you. I'll be a father to your son, and I'll warm your bed, and I'll keep you safe." And so it really seems like at this point the chef is trying to argue his way out of the fact that this woman doesn't view him as the professor, that she knows that's not his true identity. And it creates a real crisis for him, because if she knows the truth, then the professor is truly dead and he can't cling on to that identity anymore. And I feel like that's a really deep and complex issue that Makkai gets at, that I really love about this story. One issue that I have with this story that I don't like is it feels more like a fable than an actual story. A lot of the stories in this collection have a very fable feel to it, and she even acknowledges it in the very first story that she writes. She notes that, I made this more fable than actual story at this point by changing some of the details. And I feel like that's a consistent theme that I found throughout these short story collections that I've been picking up from my local library, where a lot of authors choose the fable format instead of creating complex stories, they create general ideas with character archetypes instead of three-dimensional characters. And if this were happening, once or twice, that'd be fine. But this is happening in a lot of short story collections, which I think tend to make the short stories forgettable and kind of boring. I liked this short story, but I know will it stick around forever in my mind? Probably not. Still fun to read though. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Briefcase by Rebecca Makkai from Music for Wartime, a pretty solid collection of short stories, and I particularly enjoyed reading The Briefcase because it had a lot to say about the need for an identity and how a stolen identity can function just as well as your own. So I definitely recommend that you read it if you can find it. I'm sure it's online somewhere in and a literary journal of some kind. You can read that if you can't necessarily find the book. Let me know what you thought about it if you read it before, or you simply want to comment on something I said in my review here. I would love to have a discussion with you. And in the meantime, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about this interesting short story collection and about Rebecca Makkai. And in the meantime, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and stolen identity travels. Farewell.